For full episodes of the Diverse Mentality podcast, check the links in the description below. The full video version is available on the main channel, and the audio version is available on your favorite streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. This morning, Joe Budden basically fired Rory and Mal. So if you know about the Joe Budden podcast, you know that he was doing it with two other co-hosts, Rory and Mal. And he basically fired them with them not being there live on his show, which is definitely not professional. I would never do that in terms of what happened with me and Sean. That's just not cool at all. And he's basically, this is the crazy thing. So when I first heard the audio, I was like, okay, maybe Rory or Mal are there listening and they just kind of accepted what the situation was. But when you look at the video, which he kind of removed that episode, I think it was like an hour or two after he posted it on his Patreon, he removed it. But of course, the internet rips things and they'll get it immediately the second you upload it. People will rip it and just own it for themselves. And yeah, when I saw the video version, it's literally Joe Budden, like, you see this empty room? It's literally Joe Budden just pointing at like empty chairs and pretending like he's talking to Rory and Mal. It's hilarious when you look at it from that point of view. What's not hilarious is obviously what he said in the way he kind of dismissed them. It was unprofessional, like I said, and just, disrespectful on kind of a lot of different fronts. And basically, from what people are saying in terms of the episode, he basically says that Rory and Mal wanted more out of the situation than they were getting. Now, we don't know Rory and Mal's position on things, so I'm not siding with Joe Budden. I'm just going off what Joe Budden is saying right now. And based off what Joe Budden explained was that they wanted more cuts of deals. They wanted more ownership of the podcast, and they felt like they weren't getting their fair share. And like Joe Budden just did deals on his own and wasn't really consulting the team and just explaining why he didn't do the Spotify deal or explaining why these things didn't go right. And let me just go over a bit of what Joe Budden said. In the clip, Joe Budden is going off about contracts, advertisers, and money when he says, y'all will not continue to treat me this way. Y'all not going to continue to treat these people this way. Y'all can take that fucking dark energy, that arrogance and entitlement somewhere else. I say all that to say we're not going to do this since Rory feels like he has so many options. Somehow he still feels he's running the show. He still feels like he has choices and options. He feels like he's entitled to more. Rory, you are in breach of your contract, and from this point forward, you are fired, and you're not welcome back. Which is just horrible way of handling things. But he adds, Mal, I'm the person that has to say that. The gale of you to think that you are deserving the way that I am. So, first off, this is the way I'm viewing it, and this is my opinion. Obviously, I don't know the full details. I'm just going off of what's public right now. We don't know what Rory and Mal have said. And just like how me and Sean, you guys don't know the details. So, if we were to go public, bash each other, it's just one side, and then the truth. That's all it really is. So, I feel like if Joe Budden is saying what he's saying and it's correct, the way that if he's speaking the facts of the situation, if Rory and Mal feel like they wanted to own more, they should have said that in the beginning of the whole show. Like when you guys started the Joe Budden podcast, which is weird to be on a show and have it be the name be about that specific person. If it's the Joe Budden podcast, that title means to me that it's Joe Budden's shit, period. If I name this the Quake Mentality podcast, which I was thinking of doing initially, but I scrapped that idea, then, it'd be my shit. It would just be me. Nobody else, and it's my shit, period. The Diverse Mentality podcast, that's more of a name that you can bring people on, and people can, be co-hosts and add in their opinions and stuff like that. But just that's the red flag first, is the Joe Budden podcast. Now, you could argue the point that, hey, Joe Budden brings on, people because of his name. He used to be a rapper, personality on Love and Hip Hop, all this type of stuff. You could say that's the reason why it's named that, and that's why it brings people on. That's a good argument, but still, it's still weird to have the Joe Budden podcast featuring Rory and Mal. It's just, that would have been a red flag to me if I were to join on. The second thing is, Rory and Mal can't complain about contracts if they didn't negotiate that in the beginning of the show. So when you guys first started together, You obviously negotiate contracts. You talk about what's owed, what's this, what's that, how much percentage you want to own, if you want to own percentage, or if you're getting a cut of payments or whatever the case may be. If they negotiate that in the beginning and Joe Budden's not fulfilling that on his end, then obviously it's Joe Budden's fault. But if they never negotiated that in the beginning, they have nothing to complain about. Because here's the thing, right? When something isn't blown up yet and is just starting, everybody's cool. Everybody's fine. If they don't get percentages, if they get just a certain amount of money, they're fine with it, right? So like, for example, for this podcast, we're making decent amount of money. We're not making really anything, to cover this rent that I'm paying every single month, to cover the electricity of this building every single month, because I don't need to have this building. This building here is specifically for the podcast. I was doing it back of my house, in my room, perfectly fine on the main channel, not having to pay rent in terms of, a business rent and business internet and business electricity, all this business crap. I didn't have to do this. The reason why I created this for the podcast, and we're in the red every month. I'm in the red every single month because this podcast isn't covering that amount that's due every month. That amount is getting covered from my main channel. So what am I getting to in this point? I'm totally losing track of here. My point in that is, they're not taking on all that, baggage in the beginning, and you're not making a lot of money in the beginning. So nobody really argues in the beginning about money because nothing's being made. But here's the thing. When you sign on a contract, you kind of, like on the last episode I mentioned, have long-term vision and see where this could possibly go. If you feel like it could blow up and be something big, then in the beginning, you might want to negotiate about ownership. Maybe you might be like, hey, if I'm bringing my thing to this, my personality, my audience to this, I should get a percentage, and Joe Budden could, argue with Rory and Mal and be like, yeah, you owe this percentage and that and that. But if you never negotiate that and you just want money up front, which is like a monthly payment, when this podcast is just starting, then you should be happy with that because you're getting early money when we're not even making money off the podcast. That's really what the situation is. If Rory and Ma were like, hey, this podcast is just starting, you ain't making any money, I'm not joining this shit, I want some money out of this. Joe Budden could be like, okay, you're not getting ownership, you'll just get more money than me. I'm not getting shit because this podcast doesn't make anything. You're going to get a lot more money than me, and you can enjoy that. And that's your limit of money. So let's just say it's $5,000 a month. Let's just say, for example, right? And the podcast is only making $1,000 a month. Obviously, Joe Budden's in the red. If he's doing it in a building where it's like this, where you have to pay rent, all that stuff, he's in the red. But he's taking that hit because he knows down the line the podcast is going to blow up and he's going to own 100% of the podcast. So when sponsorship deals come in, when YouTube and all that stuff starts to come in, he's going to get a majority of that because he's taking on all the risk. Now, if Rory and Mal decided to invest money into the podcast and they want a percentage, that's different. But you can't complain when something blows up and then complain about your contract and be like, oh, no, I should have owned this. I should have owned. Nah, you should have negotiated that in the beginning. If you didn't negotiate that in the beginning, it sucks to suck. This guy's taking on all the risk, so he gets majority of everything. That's how it goes. And obviously, contracts aren't meant to last forever. Eventually, you're going to renegotiate a contract, and maybe their contract, when they renegotiated it, maybe on Rory and Mal's end, they were probably like, hey, we're trying to renegotiate this contract. We want percentages. And Joe Budden's like, fuck no, I don't want to give you guys percentages. And then there could be a problem, So, yeah, I don't know whose story is whose and what's going to happen down the line here, but you got to honor your contracts at the end of the day. It is what it is. I was stuck in a shitty contract for 3 years with a company, MCN, that I was with, and I had to own up to it, man. It just is what it is. Sometimes you sign bad deals, you don't see the longevity of everything, and, it happens.